We've already talked about a number of influences on behavior and mental processes, including a couple of topics that we would classify as biological influences, a couple of topics we classify as social influences, and a number of topics that could be psychological and or a combination of the three. Learning is another topic that would fit into that category, a combination of some psychological as well as perhaps some social and some biological. And you might remember from your general psychology class that we define learning a little bit differently than you might in day-to-day life. We are talking about a relatively permanent change in behavior due to experience. In other words, it's something that stands the test of time. It holds up over time. And it does so in a way that's related to our behavior. We do something differently. And that happens because of an experience we've had, something that's happened to us. The process is what we call association. We begin to think of two things as going together. And it's because of conditioning or this process where we've seen those things happen together. Those things might be what we call stimuli. And so we might associate one stimulus, perhaps a smell, with another stimulus, perhaps a bodily sensation. That'd be what we call classical conditioning. That's from Pavlov's work with the dogs. We could also associate a response with its consequence. In other words, we could come to the point we understand if this happens, then this is going to happen. It's what we call operant conditioning, coming out of Skinner's work. Now, classical conditioning includes a number of specific components. I want you to make sure that you review those in your book, as well as those processes of acquisition, extinction, generalization, and discrimination. We don't see too many real explicit Pavlovian type demonstrations in the movies, but if you watch Down to the Bone, you will see a scene where she mentions the cleaner, reminding her of the smell of the cleaner, reminding her of something. It's a great example of classical conditioning. In operant conditioning, I want you to understand that the basic idea is, like I mentioned a second ago, behavior is associated with its consequence. And so a behavior can become more or less likely to occur depending on the consequences. Please do review the information in the book about what distinguishes a reinforcement from a punishment. Those are some key concepts. Then, as you watch the movies, you'll see examples of this in Down to the Bone, Thumbsucker, and Charlie Bartlett. With Down to the Bone and Charlie Bartlett, you could think about, is the timing and the form of the reinforcement or the punishment likely to really lead to the desired outcomes? In other words, to understand operant conditioning, we need to think about what was the intended outcome? What behavior might actually be being affected? And is this dynamic more likely to be the product of reinforcement or punishment? In Thumbsucker, we see another perspective on operant conditioning, one that highlights the fact that consequences of behavior are not always administered by another person. Sometimes the consequences are more inherent in the process. So we have one more video on talking about the last few details, but for now, please do make sure you're thinking about how does this fit with the movies I might want to watch.